And now, it is time for the reveal.
I'm not showing you guys shit. No, hello, welcome to another video. It is I, your host. Yes, it indeed is me, Mediaphile. Hello. I am here to bring you another video, another look into my psyche. No, I'm not wearing my nice garb as I always do. It is AD, and you're insane if you think I'm going to wear that. So, no, I'm simply just here to bring to you some, some sort of things that I've learned over the past couple, centuries of my life. And so I'm going to go over certain things that I think you might find quite entertaining. So, this channel, well, for those of you who don't know, newcomers, hello, newcomers. I am here to talk about certain things, topics that are happening now, things that are happening in my life, Sometimes they're going to be magical things, sometimes they're going to be things that are a bit more mundane, and some things, there are things that are in between. But the things that I talk about, the things that I like to, show everyone, are things that, I believe require a certain type of finesse that other people cannot truly deliver to you in the best way possible. So I am wearing lighter garments. I am wearing what I've told you are my pajamas, essentially. They're a lot more, freeing. And I quite enjoy it. There's a lot more streetwear. And mages do have streetwear. Okay, it's coming soon. But no, seriously though. So mages, we live in the society, whatever. When we wear things like this, the gloves are a bit much, I know. But I'm doing this for more theatrical purposes only. But, no, so seriously. Recently, I have started, doing this thing called gaming. And recently I've come into contact with certain people that I believe are quite nice. And so I play with them, for a good amount of time. We've got to bond over the, however long it's been. Probably explains why you've seen that certain video on my channel recently. Just a little snippet. It was more for them than for you. I probably might take it down after a few, I don't know if I feel like it. But it is still something that is there. It is something that I am indeed, excited about because I actually have people to talk to now, opposed to my everyday life. Working with people from the mundane world and magical realm, it is this big thing. It's a whole focus I don't really have anymore because I don't really care for it. So, but anyways, so today I'm going to talk about something about, I sort of wanted to talk about something magical because I feel like I haven't really done it in specific detail in quite some time. A certain topic. I remember the first video or so, which was, I don't even know when that was. I spoke about griffins, and then another video I spoke about dragons and everything of that nature. So this video, I know it's not as grand or theatrical as my things usually are. I like to be in a certain nice dark place, with candles lit, setting the atmosphere for my mana to charge. Right now my mana is in, what's it called? Repose. Because I am in a separate location right now. We are moving things back and forth. I'm trying to find a nice location. Something that is more ideal to my persona. The lighting is actually not quite bad. It's actual natural lighting. That is actually quite nice. And I actually enjoy it rather much. So it is what I'm using right now at the moment. And so I'm sort of starting to figure the things out. My mana keeps moving me back and forth. I have no idea what's going on. I don't really know when to feel, when to feed, when to charge myself. And so I'm trying to go through things, go through life, try to find ways to balance myself out, to balance my mana, which is very important. It's something that I believe I spoke about in a few videos ago. But if you want something more in-depth about mana, feel free to write it in the comment section and I will address it post-haste. So, without further more delay... Hello, freaks! That covers everyone. It's too hard to, go into the lords, the ladies, the clowns, the rats, everyone. You know who you are. Isolationists, rejects, my people. Welcome to another video. Welcome to another recording. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to talk about some certain subjects. Forgive the very vague introduction. I'm sort of trying to figure myself out, trying to get myself back into the mood of things, back into the swing of... God, that was so corny. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. No, but, back into the swing of, making these videos. I would like to do them a lot more, frequently, week by week, as I mentioned before. But honestly, the way my schedule is working, it's not. So, you just have to deal with it. And I apologize if I'm speaking a bit fast or slurred. It's not my intention at all. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to speak in a way where I can get as much information to you as quickly as possible, while still being clear and concise, which is actually a challenge for me. But in today's video, I will be addressing mermaids again and ogres, believe it or not. So in the last video, I mentioned a brief thing about mermaids, how they are sort of the creatures that dwell within the light and dark. These are creatures that have been around for a long time, and some have believed that they were natural births. And if you remember in my Dragon Origins video where I spoke about, I believe it was the 5 dragons that are fabled in their mythology to have created the world as we know it today, a lot of creatures were born from the mating. A lot of creatures were born from their existence and from the influence of their power. Yeah, mate. And so a lot of these creatures sort of still exist, and they retain certain, elements of the dragon's original power. One of them being immortality. So, as you all know, mermaids, perhaps. Oh my god. I'm sorry. It's the allergy season. I'm still fighting it. Forgive me. Bear with me. So mermaids are creatures, hybrids, that they're sort of their origin in the mythology is sort of, it varies from culture to culture. You see remnants of them within the Middle East. In Greek mythology, not so much. And then even some things in Asia. You have things like Naga, which also are, sort of deviants of mermaids, so to speak, but they went through a different process. So us mages, we have a different theory behind how they came to be. So a very long time ago, perhaps thousands of years, before the first mage, I believe it is the first mage collective was formed, there were sects of us located in different areas. If you remember correctly, when I spoke about the things about the griffins, how they were essentially abominations that were created from magic, by infusing 2 species that have nothing in common to fuse them both together, they create a sort of abomination. And so when that happens, it not only does it make the creatures sterile, but it can make them stupid. And so it's a very risky business. It is exceedingly rare to find a specimen of that kind with its mentality and with its, mental faculties, is what I'm trying to say, completely intact. And so when you go through this process of creating the science, of creating the sigil and the ritual to make this creature properly, you have to get things of a specific size, you have to get things of a specific age, and you have to go through the right processes within the ritual. So when it comes to things like mermaids, we have things like the spirits that dwell within our realm and the next. And then you have animals that can sort of commune with them. And then you have the dragons. Now the dragons are essentially arcane forces in the flesh. They are things that were made real in my realm, and they sort of take up a space in time. And so within that space, it is a conflux. Is that the right word? Perhaps it is. A conflux of spiritual energy merging with magical energy. And because these founding dragons were also dragons of nature, things like water, earth, fire, light, dark, whatever I talked about, you have these sort of things happen, and the creatures within that place get tainted with that same power. And so that a manifestation of magical energy takes place. So what happened, at least according to our theory, is that a couple of our collective went forth to experiment. This was during the dark times within our early on history, when we first discovered our ability to harness the mana that is within the atmosphere, that is within the universe, and within life itself. And we were able to manifest it and do whatever we will for it. But in the beginning, we didn't really have a set amount of rules. We didn't really have a set moral system. Because morality is something that is different from culture to culture. And how you use your magic and how you apply it in your daily situation depends entirely upon the state or perhaps the place in which you are dwelling. Certain places have certain rules or laws that govern them. Sort of how this universe, this realm, has its own specific laws set in place, so that us mages who traverse this realm cannot use the magic that we would normally use within ours. We have to rely upon a different sort of magic, things like passive magic, which is what I am sort of professing in this time. And so mermaids came into the picture when certain mages came into contact with certain spirits on a separate plane. And so they had an idea about creating energy, creating life. And so some of these mages even volunteered themselves for the experiment. It was very twisted and very dark. But the way this happened is that essentially the dragons also got involved in this because the dragons were already making life. This was something that was, besides them. Before, when I mentioned how dragons in the origins, we were created to keep the world in balance because the dragons became arrogant with their power because absolute power corrupts absolutely. Unfortunately, this simply is the case for dragons because the power-hungry monster. I'm joking. You got to look. I know there are dragons watching this. Okay, and I know you are out there. I'm not attacking you. I'm simply talking about the origins of your people, of your culture. It is not my fault that I harbor some sort of weird. It's not racism. It's not racism. Okay, what it is that it is perhaps a concern. I'm being extremely cautious around your kind because I was attacked on the road when I was on my way to a soiree I was invited to. It was a tourney, whatever, but I was going on my way. This dragon came out of nowhere and attacked me. So, yes, I'm a little, whatever, but I have a reason for that. But anyways, you're not all the same. I'm just saying some dragons, and you know who you are like that. So, there were creatures that were created to help balance the world out in its magic, to sort of fight against the dragons. The mermaids were essentially a byproduct of the mages trying to find another creature, another subhuman that they could not only dominate, but help them in their fight against these dragons, who are probably no longer around, supposedly. So, mermaids came into the picture when we started infusing a magic into the natural realm. And when this happened, sort of things started to manifest. We tried to go to different regions and influence the creatures there. But what we noticed was that the sea held a lot of potential, a lot of power. It is extremely vast and it's always in motion, sort of like mana. In some, I believe, theories, we believe that water is perhaps a physical aspect of the spiritual nature of mana itself. Since mana comes from the spiritual realm, water is supposed to be its physical form. And so that's why it has so many properties, and that's why so many things thrive off of water, and how water is something that is essential to the survival of the planet, like mana is. And how water is in almost everything. We say the same thing about mana. But mana in itself, and this is a very, very, very small, not perhaps 100 to 100% comparison. But it is something that is set forth in place to help us imagine how mana works. Mana is like the air, but it is also like water. Air is when mana is completely free. It's able to move around and everything else. But air can be charged with power. It can be twisted, corrupted. It can cause damage. And sometimes it can cause reprieve. For those who are suffering from very dry or horrid conditions, a nice breeze is sometimes what we need. And breezes help carry fragrance and they help carry creatures from point A to point B. Water could do the same thing, except water is a lot thicker. Water is sort of a comparison with mana that has been burdened by other magical energies. When mana is pure, it flows like air. When mana is, I believe, what's the word? I don't want to say corrupted because it's not always a type of corruption. When mana has been, what's the right word? Paired or perhaps mixed with other elements, other types of magic, or perhaps other things in nature that sort of infuse itself with that same mana, it becomes things like water. And so water holds a lot of significance and power, especially within the mage society. Things like blues and everything else, the sky, all of those things, all the iconographies you can imagine about water, they have some sort of semblances to mana, the same way air works. And even earth has mana, and there's different components within mana, whatever. But what I'm trying to get to is that water is very significant when it came to the creation of mermaids or merfolk. I know it's a very long history. I have a history book about the magical realm. I have to go get it. I could explain to you later. This is honestly could be a 2 or 3 hour video, but I'm trying to shorten this into at least half an hour. So a lot of mages, they got to the shore. They noticed it. They were able to manipulate the elements. They were able to manipulate the fish. But they thought we need someone, an emissary in the water, in order to fight against the dragon of the sea, which was incredibly powerful, incredibly large. Mages ourselves, we weren't so proficient in swimming, but some of us were proficient in, what's the word? Transfiguration. And so some of us were able to, become sort of things like animals or whatever else. But we couldn't find a necessary or I believe a permanent trait to help us traverse both lands without sort of going through the process. Because in order to do this transfiguration perfectly, the ritual itself can take a few hours, and it takes a few hours to get back out. Unfortunately, when it came to the experimentation or through the ritual, a few of the mages that volunteered for it became transformed completely. Other times, and this isn't always the case, it's just according to our mythology, our theory as to how they came into being. The mages went through a strange metamorphosis by being near the water. There was fish in the water, and so some of them ended up transforming their bodies almost completely into certain deformed creatures in the ocean. That is why in the depths of the ocean you have these strange creatures that look very horrid. We had similar creatures like that, except a lot more higher within the depths of the water. But what we found out was that by careful manipulation, we could sort of create a hybrid without sacrificing anything internal. So this is sort of dark. I don't know what it is. But so what the mages did was that the mages would engage in things like orgies or everything else with perhaps other mages or perhaps other creatures by using certain types of magics. And then when the female of the species is able to conceive, the embryo, or I believe the fetus itself, is then removed and then placed into a vat of water that has been infused with the sea's mana. Then we then take the blood of an animal, or sometimes the animal itself, and then we use a specific ritual to then infuse the animal with the fetus. So sort of feed it as it is growing. And so we manipulate the genetic makeup of this creature with that of the fetus over time. And this is sort of a long subject. But once it reached adulthood and we were able to create a male and female version, we were then able to manipulate its its life force in order to imitate immortality. Mermaids do not necessarily live forever. They have incredibly long lifespans. But if you notice correctly, and even certain creatures you have here on Earth, things like crocodiles or alligators, they have a certain type of gene that can essentially allow them to live for hundreds of years, if not more, provided they have the resources they need to survive. We implemented a similar thing when it came to mermaids. Now, here's another theory I will put out to you. Some of them think that mermaids were actually, I believe, actual creatures, sort of deities. Not deities, I'm sorry. Think of angels as, mermaids as angels of the sea, sort of like that, but they were twisted and corrupted. So they sort of ended up developing those, vampiric-like tendencies to sort of seek and hunger for human flesh to sustain them. The fish of the sea are fine, but whenever you have the blood of a mage, perhaps within your system, perhaps of a human, the mana within those creatures are a lot more potent. We don't really know why, it just is for now. We're still going through some certain subjects and everything else. So these mermaids were created by using these certain rituals, according to our theory, or according to our studies. And in the rare occasion where they were made naturally, they were done so by the influences of spirit and nature communing. And so by creating a creature that can then balance out the land and the sea, because the land and the sea were at war at a time. So they needed a creature that could sort of act as an ambassador for both and keep things in line. That is why the sea will only go so far on the shoreline. And then there are times where sometimes the sea overtakes the shore, but can never overtake the land, at least for a long amount of time. And when that happens, that means that an imbalance was struck. And so then mermaids then have to be sent forth to investigate and wonder why. And sometimes it could be the very mermaids or sirens even that created this imbalance to begin with. Then we have to come in and sort the mess out. That is just how it is. And I'm sorry, but this is according to our, our theories, our studies behind it. But that's a huge thing about mermaids. Okay, so I don't want the mermaids getting mad at me. And then over time, these same mermaids developed certain abilities to be able to manipulate magic to a certain extent. They were limited in their magical capabilities, but one of the boons that they received, not only from my society, but from themselves or their creator, was that they were able to blend in with us. They were able to even mate with us and then procreate. That is why some mermaids are able to look human when they're out of the water. They have these certain abilities to not only protect them, but to give them an advantage when they otherwise wouldn't. And so they gain sustenance from the water as we do. It's this whole thing. I could go into it for a long time, but there's so much history into this. It's quite fascinating. But enough about mermaids. That is pretty much what I'm able to talk to you about. Now, I was going to talk about ogres for a bit. Now, ogres or trolls, it's sort of, intermingle or whatever. I think I'll probably go into trolls. Let's just talk about trolls. Now, trolls, as you know, in the mythology, in the European essence of everything else, trolls are essentially these large brutes that guard bridges. you know. But believe it or not, there's actually some historical, magical significance behind it. I'll explain to you right now. Trolls, believe it or not, were sentinels or stewards of certain locations and regions throughout the world. And so a troll's position was sort of like a divine gatekeeper at a certain time. Their task was to guard a certain region from certain creatures of any kind from going in without I believe, the permission of the ruler or perhaps the entity of that region. The troll is essentially a servant of whoever commands that region, and their task is to protect the entrance of that region at all costs. That is why currently now, as trolls, well, not now, but before, they were always guarding things like bridges or gates. Their task was to stop whoever was coming from getting in. They're essentially sentinels, guardians. They would look over, they even had the ability to discern, which is crazy. But over time, trolls, unfortunately, were pulled from I believe their masters or from their regions when certain places went to war. Trolls were then overpowered and killed. Other trolls were corrupted. And so because trolls over time gain influence from the land, if the land becomes tainted, the troll then becomes tainted. That then made them a liability in order to guard the places in which they were tasked for. So then they ended up being pushed out of their roles and into nature. Some were even hunted for sport, which was incredibly sad, but it did indeed happen. However, through time, the trolls have learned to sort of gain magic from the land, the mana, and they were able to manipulate it, just like mermaids did with the sea, just like we did, how I've explained it, manners and everything. The trolls also learned, in some ways, how to manipulate it. But here's the crazy part. So, remember before when I mentioned the griffin? How it was then put into our world and certain creatures got through. The troll was one of them. So the troll got through, and sometimes trolls would appear as extremely large people. That's just how the magic in this world works. It just transforms them. They don't really have all their faculties or all their powers. They came through either for safety or for curiosity, but whatever it is, it happened. They come through, and sometimes they take the form of people. Other times they take the form of large animals, things like apes or perhaps strange, large, bulky creatures. Sometimes they would do things like buffaloes or bulls or whatever. And in the rarest of circumstances, some of them even became people. But I believe I mentioned that. I'm losing it. I'm sorry. I'm bloody losing it. I don't even know what to think about anymore. But nowadays, trolls, they take on a completely different meaning. Trolls nowadays are people that just want to, annoy you just for the sake of it. But that wasn't the original task of a troll. A troll was a sentinel before in my realm, many thousands upon thousands of years ago. Now, they're almost non-existent. They try to exist as people. Some of them even decide to just take the form of trees or rocks or whatever. Anything that they could do. And some of them, are just out there. I don't even know. But most often they try to remain in our realm because we still have a place for them. We sort of learned recently, within the last 200 or 300 years, we were able to incorporate them into our society, and so they're able to act out their roles. But they have to go through a very elaborate screening and regular checkups to make sure that they're not being corrupted by other mages or other creatures, especially of the dark. But are they dark creatures? Not really. They were completely neutral. However, because they gain influence from the land or whoever rules the land, it can make them either dark or light. Unfortunately, through things like appearances of politics, people just didn't trust the trolls that much anymore. And the lords all became greedy for power. And that inevitably affected the trolls. So they ended up leaning more towards the dark. But they're really, truly neutral. Mermaids, who can be people who are cursed as well, mostly develop these bad habits through some, innate ritual that went wrong. Sometimes they were creatures that were of a kind before. But then through the transformation process, they sort of became corrupted. And so they have those sort of tendencies to, lash out and eat men. But that mostly happened when they came over here. Because what happened was that when the mermaids came over here, through those weird rifts I was talking about before in the other video, aside from trolls, mermaids were one of the ones that went through. The rift was quite large. It was about the size of a state. It was huge. So a couple of mermaids got through and sirens, but then when they came here, they changed. Some of them still retained their form, but they became dark or twisted. And then nature, we have a lot of mana here, but it's different. It's not as thick as it was in the ocean. And so mana in this realm, not only is it living within the nature itself, but it has developed a tendency to lean more towards people, because people are the embodiments of emotions, of spirits. And so that is where the spirits linger. The spirits linger within people, within creatures, not necessarily so much within the world as much. The spirits are extremely important when it comes to things like mana. They essentially sort of create mana. Mana is sort of a extension of the essence of a spirit. And since humans have spirits, the mana collects. But the reason why it is so potent within the humans in this realm is because the humans have not figured out a way to expel the mana into magic in a form that can help, get these things going into the atmosphere, into the world. And so the mermaids, some of them, when they came through, they turned into dolphins to hide themselves. And some of them are fine. Other ones are not so much. But they used to attack men on ships before because they were the most common thing they saw. Were women immune to the siren song? Not all the time. But, because it just went after. Except men have a certain tendency to be a lot more, driven for, certain desires that a siren can then manipulate and use. Most often it was men. But let's not forget there were also male sirens that could do the same thing, even for both. So, yeah. It was, I did so much. But when this happened, it was a huge fiasco. They came over. And the reason why they attacked men and women on ships was because they were the only potent source of mana within their area. And so in order to sustain themselves and their long lifespan, they have to consume a certain amount of mana because they're here. The mana in my realm is a lot more. It's in everything. Just being in the water, you get a lot of mana coming out of it. Unfortunately, and you expel a lot of mana when you use spells and things of that nature, but because people here aren't using spells, and because the mana within your world is somewhat diluted, the sirens that came over were extremely deficient in their mana deposits. So they have to go after the creatures that had the most mana, which were men. And then they had this bad connotation, and then they were romanticized because of Disney, and it's a whole thing. But, without bringing it further, mermaids, sirens, trolls, they were all good ones, and some probably still are. The same thing with people. And now they're probably rejects, like how all of us feel. So what I want you to take out of this video, aside from the information that I just gave you, is that if you ever meet perhaps a mermaid in the wild, or perhaps if you meet someone, always try to be kind and respectful, because you never know who you're entertaining. It could be an angel, like whatever you have in your belief system. It could be a siren. It could even be a vampire, and you don't want to piss those off. So make sure that you're paying attention, that you're being nice, kind to others, to family. Love who you have in your life. Treat them with respect and kindness. And always remember that there's people like me that care for people like you. That we sort of, go forth. And we ask the Great Spirit Pahalu to look after his children. To look after all of you. Because all of us rejects, we need someone to look after us. And I, quite frankly, need someone with potency, someone with knowledge, someone with passion, someone who loves all of you for your freakish ways. But not too freakish. Paolo has to maintain a level of dignity, But thank you so much for listening. I hope that what I said spoke to all of you, gave you something to think about, gave you the energy you needed to get through your life, to go through whatever mundane tasks you have to do throughout this entire life. Know that I love you, I care for you. I am charging my mana and sending it out into the air, into the world for it to find you. I want you to be kind, feed your pets, and if your pet is your brother that you're not going to cage, so be it. Be happy, be kind, and remember that I like you. Because love is a strong... I'm joking. I love all of you. Oh! Scared myself. But be well. And remember to, get plenty of sleep. Because if you're not, you'll wake up like me. Goodbye.